Hey everyone, welcome back. We're about to take a deep dive into something super important, freedom of speech.
It's one of those things, right? Always relevant.
Always relevant. It's always in the news. We're going to look at what it really means, why it matters so much, and maybe the trickiest part, where do we draw the line?
Yeah,
So the sources we're looking at today, they all emphasize how freedom of speech is like this fundamental pillar
hmm
of democracy, right?
yeah,
How we express ourselves, how society actually moves forward.
yeah. And I think one of the things that's interesting about freedom of speech is it's not just this abstract concept. There are real tangible mechanisms by which this impacts how a democracy works.
Yeah, it's not just some feel-good thing. It has actual teeth.
Yeah,
It makes stuff happen.
totally.
So it's
Totally.
called the cornerstone of democracy
Right.
for a reason, right? But
Yeah.
like, what makes it so essential? How does it actually work, like on the ground in the real world?
Okay, so think about it this way. Freedom of speech empowers citizens to be informed participants in their own governance. It allows for open debate, the ability for scrutiny of government actions, and kind of a marketplace of ideas where different perspectives can clash,
Right.
and then ultimately lead to better solutions. So without it, power becomes concentrated, dissent is stifled, and societies stagnate.
Which is not what we want. So
Yeah,
it's not just about being able to complain about the government, right? It's about actually having a say in where things go.
exactly, exactly. And being able to hold people accountable.
Exactly. It's like a feedback loop, right?
Mm.
Free speech helps us challenge how things are, and that very act of pushing back can lead to progress, real change.
Totally. And history's full of
Well,
examples that
that's
demonstrate this principle in action. Think about the suffragette movement, right?
Yeah,
Women being able to voice their demands, organize protests,
right.
and really challenge deep-seated social norms, that was key in securing their right to vote.
And that's just one example. The civil rights movement, the fight for LGBTQ plus rights, all these huge turning points, they all started with people speaking truth to power, demanding change. It's powerful stuff.
Very much so.
But obviously, nothing's absolute, right? We can't have total freedom without any limits. So where do we even begin to figure that out?
That's where we get into this idea of harmful speech, and that's where things get really tricky. It's like, what types of speech might actually incite violence, spread, like really dangerous misinformation,
Right.
or promote discrimination?
Yeah, the classic example is shouting fire in a crowded theater. Right.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
bad news. Creates chaos, potential for injuries. But the further you get from those super obvious examples, the harder it gets. So who actually gets to decide what's harmful and what's not? Where do we draw that line without shutting down legitimate expression?
Yeah, it is a delicate balancing act, and there's no easy answer to it. There are different philosophical approaches to kind of navigating this dilemma. Some argue for a very, very narrow definition of harmful speech, focusing primarily on direct threats
Okay.
or inciting violence. Others take a much broader view and they encompass things like hate speech, misinformation, that while it may not lead to direct physical harm,
Yeah.
can still have a detrimental effect on individuals or society as a whole.
It's like, where's the line between protecting people from harm
hmm
and also making sure we're not silencing dissenting voices? Our sources talk a lot about how censorship, even when well-intentioned, can be dangerous. Like, how can that actually erode freedoms? Can you break that down a little?
Yeah, absolutely. The danger with censorship is it often starts with good intentions, but then it can quickly spiral into a slippery slope.
Oh, yeah.
Once you start limiting certain types of speech, it becomes easier to justify further restrictions.
Right.
And then eventually you end up with the chilling effect where people are afraid to express themselves at all, even on non-controversial topics.
Right, because who knows what'll get banned next.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
This is making me think about times in history where government started censoring stuff in the name of national security or whatever, but then those rules just kept expanding, until any kind of criticism was shut down.
Yeah.
And then you end up with oppression, right? You stop innovation, you stop progress.
Exactly. And history has taught us that the best way to combat harmful speech is not through suppression,
Okay.
but through more speech, through open debate, critical thinking, and
Right.
education. By engaging with challenging ideas and allowing different perspectives to be heard, we can foster a more resilient and tolerant society.
Okay, so we've talked about how important free speech is for a healthy democracy, how we can drive real progress, and how tricky it is to figure out the limits. But this leads us to another big question, right? How do we create a culture where people can disagree responsibly? Where debates don't just devolve into, like shouting matches or personal attacks?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, and there's no easy answer to it. But I think it starts with promoting media literacy,
Okay.
critical thinking skills, and empathy.
Those are big ones.
They're big ones, right? We need to teach people how to discern credible information from misinformation,
Hmm.
how to engage with differing opinions respectfully, and how to recognize the humanity in those that they disagree with.
So it's not about shutting down debate, but making it better,
Yeah,
right? Having those tough conversations, but in a way that actually helps us understand each other better.
absolutely, yeah. Freedom of speech is a powerful tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or ill. It's our collective responsibility to use it wisely,
Right.
to foster a culture of open dialogue and thoughtful engagement,
Yeah.
and to ensure that it continues to serve as a cornerstone of a just and democratic society.
Awesome. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's remember that freedom of speech isn't just a right, it's a responsibility. We've got to use our voices wisely, listen to each other with empathy, and have those hard conversations that actually help us move forward.
Yeah.
So keep those discussions going, challenge your own assumptions, and never stop learning.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for listening. See you next time.
See ya!